or at least one of the questions today that we're going to answer is whether or not Mike Tyson will get sued. And if so, does the other party have a strong case? We're also going to look at some other issues, but we definitely want to talk about Mike Tyson. So stay tuned and we will answer that question. All right, so let's go, Chloe. How are you doing today, sweetheart?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing, Dad?
I am doing very well. It is a beautiful spring day here in Texas. And so we're going to do this broadcast so that we can get out and enjoy this. What you think?
That's, excuse me. That sounds good to me. It is beautiful here in Texas. I'm glad that it's spring.
All right, so we're going to talk about Mike Tyson. We're going to talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene. We're going to talk about the judge who overturned the mask mandates on airplanes. We're going to talk about death row inmate, South Carolina death row inmate Richard Moore. Richard Moore. This is the gentleman, Chloe, who is going to be, unfortunately, executed by a firing squad if the U.S. Supreme Court doesn't intervene. We're also going to talk a little bit about prison reform. We're going to introduce the topic. This will be like part one of prison reform. And we will talk about the second part because this is such a serious topic, prison reform, that we can't give it the kind of attention that it needs as part of a multi-part show. So we're going to come back maybe even next week and finish talking. We may do 1, 2, 3 parts of it because it's just such a heavy place, a heavy space to talk about. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. We need to talk about it. It needs to be talking about badly and deeply and spoken about in depth. You know, I believe there's a prison industrial complex. A lot of prisons, especially private prisons, are making money, excuse me, off of the back of incarcerating um, men and women, especially people of color, men and women. That needs to be talked about.
And
I
deeply
heard a
and
fellow attorney coined the term
spoken.
that she's a prison abolitionist. I
Hmm.
That's what I am, and so I'm ready to start that series over the next few Saturdays to discuss and analyze it.
All right, very good. So let's start our conversation today with Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson. What an intriguing gentleman this is. Um, I'm sure you've heard about the ruckus that he allegedly got into on, I think, a JetBlue airliner. And he allegedly punched someone. And I understand that that person has now hired an attorney. So a lawsuit may be coming. And so we're going to do a quick analysis of this. But before we do, let's watch a couple of videos. We're going to first watch the actual punching that went on, and then we're going to listen to a witness.
Okay, let's go.
This is George talking to Mike Tyson, bro. This shit crazy, bro. Mike Tyson. My dog done got lit, man. He over here rapping with Tyson. Mike Tyson trying to give us some shrooms. You don't know how to act. Tyson looking out, man. This shit crazy as
He should have never gave you niggas money.
Peasants. They're peasants. That's what I'm saying.
Hey. Hey, Mike, come on. Let's go stop back. Let's do the horse, man.
JetBlue, net flight. My boy just got beat up by Mike Tyson. Turn that way.
So there it is. It's not funny because we don't we don't ascribe to violence. We don't promote violence. We don't believe in violence. But look, man, you don't grab a tiger by the tail. Okay?
That's right.
I mean, if you grab a tiger by the tail and he bites your hand, then what did you expect? And that's not to justify what Tyson did, Chloe. It's
It's
just
not.
you just don't. I, we used to say back home, you play with a puppy, he'll lick you in the mouth. Let sleeping dogs lie. I mean, what can you expect?
Yeah, what is just tickling me is just the kind of that of the guy. His name is Melvin Townsend the third. I mean, look, we've all been on. I don't know why this is tickling me so much, but we've all been
I
on
mean,
airplanes.
it's funny. I don't want anyone to think
Yeah, I'm
that
not.
our laughing is condoning violence at all. Not at all.
Not at all. It's just we've all been on an airplane. You're just trying to look. Traveling is stressful as it is. You're just trying to get to your destination. For me, I'm trying to have as least contact as possible. Be in the zone. If I want to read, put on some music. I'm just trying to calm myself down while on the airplane. And then you have the commentator who's taking the video, just taking video of this guy. To me, it seems like he's intoxicated or on something and just being annoying. Now, does this justify what Mike Tyson did? Let's
Allegedly.
allegedly,
Yeah,
allegedly did. Eh. Now, Mike Tyson is saying via his attorneys that the guy threw a water bottle at him.
that's
He
right.
basically assaulted him first. So he was. I presume they're probably, if this goes to court, if a lawsuit is filed, which it likely will be, he's going to say that he was acting in self defense. But just guys, just put it in the context of people are trying to travel. It's stressful. It's COVID. There's a new mandate where the mandate was overturned. So people are just trying to get to their destination, and you have this eager fan, as he likes to claim, just acting that way. That's what's making me chuckle a little.
Yeah. All right. So let's listen to one of the witnesses.
And as opposed to what happened with you, does it bring back some memories
Oh yeah,
about how hard he is? You know?
Well, it's really hard because when I first taped him, he's running towards me. I didn't think he was going to hit me, and then he hit me here first, and the blood started pouring out. I turned my head, 2 shots in the back.
Right.
I had headaches for months after that.
You think this guy got a little lucky?
He got lucky. He got a couple of scratches, man. You know, but you can't mess with the bull, man. Period.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I know about unruly passengers. This guy allegedly was drunk on the airlines, messing with people.
Yes.
I'm surprised the crew didn't do anything. Where was the crew?
Do you feel like they fell short? The airline staff fell short?
They were nowhere in the video, man.
Yeah.
You know, he should have been protected by this unruly passenger, man. This guy was unruly. He looked like he was drunk.
Do you feel sorry for Mike?
I do.
He has largely changed his life, hasn't he?
He's amazing now, man.
Yeah.
He signs autographs. When I see him at the airport, he gives me a hug.
Yeah.
I don't have any bad shit about Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
But you can't mess with him, man. If Mike Tyson was sitting there minding his own business, and this guy wants to make a video for TikTok or whatever, and get famous.
Yeah.
And I think he deserved what he got.
Is there a lesson in this for other people in the future that would want to try to goad Mike or any celebrity?
Like me, when I record celebrities now, I try to shoot from a distance if I know they don't like being recorded. I just shoot B-roll.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for trouble with celebrities.
Right.
With Mike Tyson, don't mess with the dude, man. The guy is a great guy. He signs autographs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's a good man.
Any message to him you can tell him right now?
Mike, I love you. And this guy, he should have been arrested by the FBI for like an unruly passenger. I shoot that every day. People drunk on the airplanes. I got your back. I love you, man. You changed your whole life around. And this guy should be charged with something, man. And don't give him a penny on the settlement. Take it to court.
All right. So I believe this guy was an eyewitness, and that's his perspective. He said the guy was harassing Mike. And as you said, when you get on the airplane, you know, you're trying to calm down. You're trying to enjoy the flight, get your mind off of everything. And the last thing you want is somebody all up in your face, you know, especially behind you, because every time they pull the seat, that disrupts you really badly, and there's not a lot of room. It does look like they went first class. I don't know.
It does. Now they had more. They had a lot more room than what I usually travel with. So
Exactly. All right. So I'm going to try to remove this laugh off my face because we don't condone violence, and
no,
and um, and also, it's not enough to punch somebody because they are harassing you. Um, if that's what happened, we don't know what happened because, the story is still unfolding, and there are some disputes here. Like you said, Mike's representative said the guy threw a water bottle. The guy, through his attorney, said, nope, not so. So we don't know. But if it was just verbal and so on, and after all, this is Mike Tyson. This is Mike Tyson, right? Mike Tyson still. I mean, Mike used to knock people out in 2-3 seconds,
yeah,
right? And still at 50 something, he still can throw some serious blows. So it's bad that this happened. I hope they get it all worked out and so on. But no, we don't believe in violence.
not at all. And if a lawsuit is filed, the question is, who will it be filed against? Obviously, I believe it would be filed against Mike Tyson, making him a defendant. I think that this attorney and Mr. Townsend, they may include the airline as a defendant as well, because as plaintiffs' attorneys, when we're trying to get damages or compensation on behalf of our clients, we look at any potential source of compensation. So not just the person who actually did the act, but who else could be held liable or responsible under the law. And I anticipate that Mr. Townsend may make an argument that, you know, security did not step in, the flight attendants did not step in, and so the airline did not provide adequate protection for him. So I believe that the airline may be included in the lawsuit as well if one is filed.
All right, there you have it. We'll move on now to the next story that we want to cover. Let's talk about this really sad story about I think his name is Richard Moore. He's on death row. He's an inmate in South Carolina. And it has been reported that he will be executed by a firing squad. Of
Mm,
all things, a firing squad, Chloe. Um,
mm,
I mean, just sad. This is the gentleman. I just pulled his photo up, and I think he chose a firing squad from what's being reported because the state of South Carolina doesn't have the needed um, drugs to do a lethal injection. A firing squad. I mean, I can't get my mind around that. I can't. I can't. I just can't. That should not even be offered to anyone. That they stand up, however they do it, and somebody shoot them to death. The state of all people shoot them to death. I think the last state to do this was the state of Utah. It put several people to death by firing squad uh, years ago, and you know, it's just hard to fathom. And I'll just say before you comment on it, I am opposed to the death penalty strongly, quite frankly, because I don't trust the system. I know how racially biased the system is. And black men are disproportionately, black and brown people, and especially black men, are disproportionately on death row. Not because they commit more deadly, deadlier crimes, but because of the bias in the criminal justice system. So I just can't trust the state to put somebody to death, knowing that there's so much racism in the system.
yeah, I agree. I am opposed to the death penalty. I do not believe that the government um, should have the moral and legal authority to take someone's life, especially because of how rampant wrongful convictions, injustice in the criminal injustice system, as I like to call it, the disproportionate um, percentage of death row inmates are men of color, black men specifically. I don't believe the government should be over providing corporal punishment for inmates. And so more about Mr. Moore. So he was planned to be executed April 29th because of a 1999 killing of a convenience store clerk, James Mahoney, according to reporting from the NPR. However, South Carolina's highest court, its Supreme Court, did issue a temporary stay, blocking the state of South Carolina from carrying out the firing squad execution. And I mean, just the reason for in other reporting that I read said that Mr. Moore chose the firing squad because the state did not have lethal injection shots. So
Right.
he either had the choice between the firing squad or the what is it, the execution chair,
Yeah, the electric chair.
the electric chair. And so to have someone, one, have to choose that, and then two, how do you run out of lethal injection shots? That doesn't make any sense. And apparently they haven't had these shots for several years now, for many, many, many years. Um, but I don't believe that the state should be able to execute any inmate based on any type of procedure, whether it be lethal injection, firing squad, or the electric chair. So I'm curious to see this. The South Carolina Supreme Court said that they're going to release a more detailed order now, but his planned execution on the 29th has been stopped. It has been stayed for now.
So, do you think there are any circumstances that would justify the state putting someone to death?
I don't. I think there are a lot of heinous crimes. I think there are evil people in the world. There's evil in the world. I think that people who commit these heinous crimes, they need to be taken out of society, and sequestered away. But I don't believe that the death penalty should still exist.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't trust the state to get it right. And I know, as a practicing attorney for 15 years, I know how biased the criminal justice system is. I know how biased America is, how prejudiced and racist the country is. And so, why would I trust a system like that to ensure that the people it puts to death, first and foremost, are guilty of the crimes? There's just big doubt about that. There was a case here, even of a white guy who was charged with arson for killing his daughter, or it may have been two daughters. And there was so much controversy about this case. And the more I read and studied and researched the case, it raised a lot of doubts in my mind as to whether this guy was really guilty. And still, the state put him to death. And so the concern that the state is executing innocent people is just reprehensible. It's too much to wrap my mind around. So I say, just not do it. I'm just opposed to it.
Me too. Me too. And I was doing some research into the death penalty and corporal punishment. Texas was actually the first state in the union to start using lethal injections in the late 1800s. And obviously, we
Doesn't
practiced in
surprise
Texas.
me at all.
Me
Not at
either. When
all.
I
Yeah,
read that, I was like, wow, wow. Based on the way that the Texas legal system works, it is not surprising whatsoever
not at
that it
all.
was the first state to implement lethal injections and corporal punishment in the United States. Um, and look, it's a lot of money for the taxpayers as well, because these inmates, they bring a lot of legal challenges. There's a lot of litigation. They have to get special accommodations on death row. It's very expensive for the taxpayer too. So from a moral, legal, and financial standpoint, I just don't and just the fact of rampant injustice in our legal system, I just don't think the government should be given that authority. And just a little bit more about Mr. Moore's case. A state judge out of South Carolina agreed to examine his legal challenge brought by him and three other death row inmates. Their lawyers are arguing that both electrocution and this firing squad are barbaric methods of killing.
I agree.
Yeah, me too. And they're saying that the firing squad and the electric chair. So from a moral, South Carolina agreed to examine his legal challenge brought by him and three other death row inmates. Their lawyers are arguing that both electrocution and this firing squad are barbaric methods of killing.
Okay, I agree. I'm sorry. I put on something here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Mhm.
Okay. Did I go blank there for a minute?
No, I just started hearing a clip of
You
myself.
started hearing yourself, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was tuning in to Facebook. That kind of freaked me out too. I thought you were still talking when it was really this thing in my ear. All right, but yeah. So we both are on the same page about the death penalty should be abolished. This particular case, though, I think violates the Eighth Amendment's prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah.
I just, and somebody say, well, but he killed someone. He murdered someone. So an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. You know, who cares what happens to him, so forth and so on. Well, that's just not my heart. And
and the reported facts on this case, that I mean, you have to look at each case on a fact and case by case basis, because what's been reported is that Mr. Moore, he went into a convenience store. He was looking for some money to support his cocaine habit. He got into a dispute with the clerk, the decedent, Mr. Mahoney. Mr. Mahoney drew a pistol that Mr. Moore, the death row inmate, wrestled away from him. They got into a tussle. Then the deceased person, he pulled a second gun, and then that's when a gunfight ensued, with the decedent then shooting Mr. Moore in the arm, and then Mr. Moore shooting the decedent in the chest.
Wow.
So at the original trial, Mr. Moore's lawyers argued he didn't intend to kill anyone because he didn't take a gun in there with him.
Wow.
So to me, those facts don't support a finding that the state should be able to take his life or use capital punishment.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Those facts, to me, I agree with you, don't rise to the level of the death penalty at all. So we pray for him.
Yeah.
We pray that God has mercy for him, and we also pray for the victim's family. Pray for everybody involved in this. But this whole notion, again, I'm opposed to the death penalty, and this whole notion of the state shooting someone to death, legally shooting someone to death, especially because they don't have the drugs to do the lethal injection, is just draconian.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's stay on that same sort of topic there, Chloe, and just introduce, we're going to just introduce prison reform. Prison reform. We work in this space every single day, every day. And we see, as we just said, the prejudice, the bias that's in the legal system. We see it every single day. And the places that convicted felons go to serve their time, you really wouldn't put your dog in places, some of these places. You would get arrested, in fact. You would get arrested if you were to put a dog in some of the places that they house these inmates. And do keep in mind the majority of these inmates are black or disproportionately, let me put it that way. They're disproportionately black. There's still, likely more white inmates because whites are the majority in the country, but they're disproportionately so. For example, there's roughly 6% of the American population that are black men, and in the prison system, there are about 25-30% of the prison system are black men. So it's like 4 or 5 times more than the representation of black men in the population. And somebody would say, well, but that's because black men are committing so many more crimes. Not true. That's what you would think. That's what you hear. That's what you see in the media. But it's not true. It's not true. It isn't true. There is racial profiling. There are wrongful convictions. There are racist prosecutors. There are racist judges. There are racist cops. Okay? And put all that together, and it explains why there's such a disproportionate percentage of black men in prisons.
You have to take all of that, all of those facts into account. And you have to go back into history as well and, you know, look at the various black codes that were implemented to incarcerate black people. The Jim Crow era that was implemented to incarcerate black people. Because after the South lost the Civil War and the US government was trying to implement these newly freed black people into American society, Southern states started implementing black codes, which was designed to keep the same slave like conditions that were before emancipation and before slavery ended. And so black people being disproportionately in having representation in U.S. prisons is by design. It's not by accident. And so then there's an onus on us to see, okay, what can we do to reform this prison industrial complex? What can we do to reform the conditions inside the prisons? What can we do to look to other alternatives to incarceration? What can we do to help rehabilitate um, former inmates who are now going back into society? All of that goes into prison reform. And if the government is not going to do it, because we see that they're not, then it falls on people like us that who are in this space, activists, people who care about our fellow citizens. And talking about this, what kind of gets on my nerves is, okay, we talk about prison reform and the conditions of racism and racial profiling, and society just wants to label us as being woke. Oh, that's just the woke people. That's just the woke left. All they care about are identity politics. Minimizing the rights that have been violated, the inhumane conditions that are in prisons, the racism that is still rampant, the systemic racism that we still deal with. It just annoys me that now, especially in our social media society, talking about these issues is just sweep to the side. Oh, they're just the woke people.
Or
It is
or
hard to get people to care.
or it's critical race theory,
Or it's critical race theory.
or it's victimology, Marxism, all those um, talking points created by white conservatives, white evangelicals, and black conservatives as well, to do as you just said, to deflect any responsibility for what this country has done to African American men. I talk about it, Chloe, in my book, Education and Justice, because prison reform should also include making schools better, making
Yeah.
communities better, right? There is a thing called the school to prison pipeline. which basically says schools that serve a lot of African American children are subpar schools, and they tend to produce African American students who lose interest in school, who perform well beneath grade level. Many of them drop out. I know about that personally. I dropped out in the 10th grade. And it's part of the reason why I wrote this book. And so the treatment that African American male students receive in public schools is awful. And it results in a lot of them ending up going to prison. Now, some of the things I talk about in this book are the importance of good teachers, something called tracking. A lot of parents don't even know what that is. School discipline, how that impacts black male students and female students. Special education, the disproportionate percentage of black male students in special ed, many of whom should not be there. And the lack of black male students in gifted and talented classes. Many should be in those classes. And on and on. I discuss in this book. If you have a son in public schools, you need this book. Okay.
Y'all need to go get that book. Seriously.
Yes.
Seriously.
Education and Justice is available at our website, educationandjustice.com, or you can get it from Amazon. So prison reform not only deals with reforming the criminal justice system, but reforming the community, jobs, opportunities, business opportunities, better schools, Head Start programs, all sorts of things would eliminate a lot of the kids ending up in prison. But our country has not been willing to spend that money and do what's necessary to help these kids.
Yeah. It's a community-based approach, just like you said. In order to reform the prisons and making sure that the disproportionate amount of black men that go to prison
is to keep them out in the
reversed.
first place.
Exactly. Let's focus on the black boys. Let's focus on the school to prison pipeline. Let's focus on going into the community and bringing activities so that there's no so that they're not lured to that type of lifestyle. There's so much that we can be doing with our young black boys when they're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old.
That's right.
And we need to do more.
That's
And
right.
organizations need to do more. And I know over the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about our organizations because we've started at least 2. The Turn organization, Texas Urban Renewal Network, Turn Dallas, as well as the Lazarus Law and Justice Project, and what we're doing to get out into the community and helping making sure that we really reach our youth before they even get into prison. So I'm excited over the next few weeks to do this deep dive into prison reform and to talk about what is needed to stop that disproportionate representation of black men in prison.
Yeah, and another thing we're going to talk about is once these brothers get out of prison, you know, the hard time they have trying to get jobs,
Yep.
and not only getting out of prison, but just picking up certain charges.
Yep.
I was representing a young man many years ago, and he told me, he said, "Mr. Corbett, I picked up a felony. Do you know where I can get a job?" And I said, "Look, let me go and do some homework." And I went and did some homework, tapped into some resources. But then I heard the Lord say to me that what he needs more than a job, is he needs to create economic opportunities for himself. And from that idea, from that thought, I came up with the CEO program, creating economic opportunities for yourself. And so the next day I told this young man, I said, listen, you need to look into creating economic opportunities for yourself. You don't have to, just because you have a record, doesn't mean that you have to be around here begging for jobs. You're a smart young man. You're able-bodied. You got 2 hands, 2 feet. You got everything everyone else has to get out here and figure out how to make money for yourself. Legally, obviously. And in so doing, you're also going to be able to employ some other brothers who need help as well. So the CEO program is something that we are working to get going that will help these young men know how to start businesses. Because listen, if a guy can get out there, Chloe, in the streets and sling drugs and sell drugs and make money doing all that, this is a businessman.
Mm-hmm.
He's just using his talents in the wrong way. But this guy already knows how to sell, how to buy products and sell it for a profit. He already knows how to do that. Just needs to find something else to sell rather than drugs. So they already come to the game with some built-in talent for business in the first place. So the CEO program is intended to help these young men tap into the resources, the inner resources that they already have, right? And so that they're not around here begging for jobs, can't get them. Nobody want to give them a job because they're a felon or what have you. Create economic opportunities for yourself.
I love that. That was brilliant. The CEO program, creating economic opportunities for yourself. And that's allowing our brothers to buy into the American dream. That's what capitalism is founded on.
That's right.
Starting businesses, being an entrepreneur, creating jobs. Look, money is green. Money doesn't discriminate. If you're able to get money and create a product or offer a service and charge for that product or charge for that service, the money is not going to discriminate. So,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh no, go ahead, Dad.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you made me think of the fact that, when you said money is green and so forth and capitalism, what have you, I told one dude, I said, look, okay, you got a record, but guess what? You can start investing in the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
You can teach yourself investing.
Mm-hmm.
And the stock market, no one is going to ask you about your record. I mean, no one even cares. If you if you have the money to buy shares in a particular company, or buy funds, invest in a mutual fund or whatever it is, teach yourself how to do it, go to the library, learn how to do it, take some classes, no one will care. In fact, there is a brother out here who I think is an executive with Michael Jordan's company or with Nike. And he had went to prison for murder years ago. He never told it. He didn't tell a lot of people. So it was a surprise when he came out and admitted that. But look how he overcame all of that. Look at how he taught himself business. It can be done. Judge Greg Mathis,
Oh yeah, he's a good example.
yes, he went to prison, convicted felon. Look at how successful he is today.
Yeah.
So I try to encourage this young man that just because you have that record doesn't mean that you cannot, do very well financially.
The CEO program. I
Yes,
love that. We're going
yes.
to be talking more about that, and we're going to put our other organizations in the description down below, so you all can find out more about what we're doing on a nonprofit basis to give back to the community and to really start the prison reform from the outside in.
Now,
Bruh.
Chloe, did you finish? There's a delay,
Yeah,
so I don't know if you're finished or not when you're talking.
I finished.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, I got this picture up. I don't know if you can see the screen, but I have this picture up of some inmates at a notorious prison in Mississippi called Parchman Farms. Parchman Farm. Notorious. Do a Google search, you all. Do a Google search, Parchman Farm and prison reform. Use those terms. And you will come to some articles that talks about this heinous, horrible place called a prison, where more than 70% of the people in this prison are black men.
Mm.
And Chloe, the prison is located on an old slave plantation. And it's not too far removed even now from being a slave plantation still.
Mm.
Parchman Farm. And there's another one like this, Angola in Louisiana. There is one where we're from, back in North Carolina. I think it's called Caledonia. There is, of course, Rikers Island in New York City. They're all over the country, these prisons that have a lot of black men living in these horrible conditions. Khalif, what's his name? Brower?
Brower. Yeah.
Khalif Brower, young man, spent 3 years in Rikers Island. I want to make sure, I want to make sure I got his name right. Yes, Khalif Browder. Spent 3 years in Rikers Island Prison, a notorious prison in New York City that's filled with mostly black and brown men, young men. But he spent 3 years in prison awaiting a trial, a speedy
Mm.
trial, which is guaranteed under the Constitution. And he was innocent of the charge. A young man, 16, I think he was 16 years old when he went in there. And he was victimized and jumped and beat up and assaulted and brutalized by the adults in that prison.
Mm.
Came out, after he got out, after he went through that torturous 3-year period, and he committed suicide. And so we're in desperate need of prison reform. Don't think, because some people are like, well, look, they committed a crime. That's what they deserve. Again, when you look at all the racism in the system, a lot of those men are in there innocent. They shouldn't have gotten the amount of years they've gotten. They shouldn't have been charged with some of the things that they were charged with. Okay? Had they been white, a lot of them wouldn't even be there. There is so much history involved in these prisons that as African Americans, we cannot just have the attitude of the majority population. We can't just say, well, that they deserve that. We cannot have that attitude, because if you only knew the history of the criminal justice and penal system in this country, you would know that for many, 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 many years, it was essentially, the prison system was essentially another slave plantation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I'm talking, Chloe, I'm 60 years old. By the grace of God, I turned 60 in February. In my lifetime, I remember convict leasing. That is something where white men would go to prisons and buy black men. That happened in my lifetime. I've talked about it before on our show. In my lifetime, I was 12, 13 years old. So within the last 50 years, convict leasing was still being practiced in the state of North Carolina. I remember the man. I remember it like it was yesterday. And it was very offensive to me then. It's offensive to me now because it's nothing more, really, than legalized slavery. Okay.
I mean, it's horrific. I encourage our listeners. You shared an article with us written by the Innocence Project staff called "The Lasting Legacy of Parchment Farm: The Prison Model After a Slave Plantation." I encourage every single person who listens to this, and we'll put this link in the description box as well, to read this article, because the Innocence Project staff really breaks down everything that my dad just illuminated and what he saw firsthand. And I just want to read a few sentences from this article. We'll put the link down in the description box below. But this article says, after the Civil War, the South's economy,
Chloe,
government, and
if you hold on, I can pull it up and they can read
okay,
along with you. Where are you at?
I am,
After the Civil War, I see it. The South's economy.
yeah,
All right, hold on. I'm going to put that up.
okay,
There it is.
there it is.
Go ahead.
Um, Hold on, let me get back to it. Okay. So after the Civil War, the South's economy, government, and infrastructure were left in complete shambles. Okay, so after the Civil War, after the Union won, slavery was ended. The South was just it was terrible. So desperate to restore the previous economic and social order and to control the freedom of newly emancipated African Americans, Southern states adopted criminal statutes, collectively known as black codes, that sought to reproduce the conditions of slavery. These laws are also commonly known as Jim Crow laws. According to historian David Oshinsky, quote, the plantation owners, as best they could, wanted blacks to return to the same place as they had been as slaves. Man. And if you scroll down a little bit, the paragraph, in Mississippi, Texas, and other states, legislatures passed, quote, pig laws, which labeled the stealing of a farm animal or any property valued at more than $10 as, quote, grand larceny, punishable by 5 years in prison, not just jail, 5 years in prison. Such laws were enforced almost exclusively against black people, reinforcing, listen to this and read this, reinforcing the man-made association between blackness and criminality. Wow. Wow.
It's amazing.
And just by those pig laws that was enacted here in Texas and in Mississippi and other states, states profited substantially from the black codes and these pig laws and the prison leasing system, what you were just describing, Dad, about that African American gentleman you witnessed. So the number of state prisoners in Mississippi rose from 272 in 1874 to 1,072 by 1877. I mean, whoo, that's evil.
So Chloe, all right. I want to read a little portion here to substantiate what I said I witnessed with my own eyes as a teenager. The amendment abolished slavery. Well, let's go back to the 13th Amendment. While the 13th Amendment abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, do you see that, Chloe?
Yeah.
It carved out a loophole that allowed for the exploitation of incarcerated people who were then and now disproportionately black. And that loophole, by the way, says that slavery is abolished except for punishment after someone has been convicted basically of a felony. The amendment abolished slavery and involuntary except as punishment for crime where the party shall have been duly convicted. Prisoners, men, women, and hundreds of children as young as 6 or 7 were then leased to private farmers and business owners who had previously depended on cheap labor supplied by slaves. That's what I saw as a teenager. That was in the 70s. They started doing this in the 19th century, about 1880 or so, and it lasted for 100 years, at least 100 years, because I saw it with my own eyes.
And these were children too,
Children as well.
who were leased out.
By 1880, at least one convict in 4 was an adolescent or a child, a percentage that did not diminish over time, according to Oshinsky.
I'm going to get this book.
Yeah, I am too. States profited substantially from the black codes and prisoner leasing system. The number of state prisoners in Mississippi rose from 272 in 1874, the year the pig law was passed, to 1,072 by 1877. Now, if we fast forward to today, they accomplished the same thing. Were able to incarcerate even more black men pursuant to the war on drugs. Okay? The war on drugs. Mass incarceration increased under the war because or pursuant to or the war on drugs, due to the war on drugs, exponentially. To the point where when the drug war started under Nixon, and it was also implemented by Democrat presidents, Bill Clinton especially. The prison population went from like 300, 400,000 to now well over 2 million people, and they're disproportionately black men. So this is by design, as you said. People think we just be, just talking. Sometimes they think that we have racial hatred. It's not that, folks. This is just what we have contended with and what we still deal with. And I see myself as someone who can speak on these issues with authority. I'm old enough to remember this convict leasing. Another thing that was going on in my childhood was something called sharecropping. I remember that very well. I dropped out of high school, so I'm a high school dropout. I am today an attorney, practicing lawyer with Chloe, my daughter, and we represent many juveniles and many adults, mainly African American, and we fight tooth and nail for these people to keep them out of the system. And so we're not saying these things because we hate white people. We don't hate white people. That's stupid. That's what, a lot of white conservatives say, folks who believe in critical race theory hate white people. That's so ridiculous. It is so ridiculous. It is so stupid. You and I both have very dear, close white friends. Um, I mean, you throughout high school and college and so forth. Um, I mean, you almost could say you have more white friends than black friends at times,
That
right?
really is true. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Seriously.
so it's to just point out and call out this racism. They say, as you said earlier, Chloe, well, they're just woke, you know, they're critical race theory because they don't want to face all this injustice that they have dealt to black and brown people, especially black people. We see it every day. And we're going to keep speaking out. We're going to keep fighting.
Every time with every breath that we have. Um, Now I will say that there are a lot of people who would go on social media and they're not really about it. They want to be a part of a group. Um, they want to be seen as maybe caring about these issues, but they really don't. And unfortunately, those people are conflated with people who actually care, who are really putting boots on the ground. And that's some of the issue I have with the Black Lives Matter organization. Not the slogan, not the thought. Black Lives. I strongly believe in Black Lives Matter, but the organization. Um, I believe that has some issues with it, and that's another topic we can talk. We can talk about that another day.
Yeah, that's a juicy topic right there.
That's a juicy topic, but I just know that I know our hearts that, and I know that we're going to continue to talk about it because this is this is our purpose. This is why God has put us here. This is what we're using our legal training to do to really have an impact, especially on the Black community. So we're gonna keep at it, guys. And and there's just so much more about prison reform. This was just a taste of what we're going to be talking about and educating our rebels about over the next few weeks about prison reform.
Yes, and I get to do this with my daughter. I'm so proud of you, Chloe, that um, having grown up in in our home, you picked up my passion um, of fighting racial injustice and fighting for racial justice. And here we are doing it together, father daughter. It's just awesome. It's mind blowing. And so I'm proud the Defiant Lawyers YouTube channel is the top legal news outlet that affects the African American community. Our channel
Yes.
is growing.
Yes.
We want it to grow a lot more, but it is growing. And you all can help it grow even more. Okay? So like, share, subscribe.
Tell people about us. Tell people about the channel.
That's
And
right.
tell people about this knowledge that we're giving out. These in-depth discussions. Let people know. We want this information to get out. We really want to make an impact on our community and communities around us.
And we are here usually Saturday afternoons. We try to do so between 1, no later than 2. We got a late start today. There's a lot of back room, backstage production that has to go on. And at the moment, we don't have producers and all of that. So Chloe and I have to do our own producing. A lot of that is me.
Yeah.
And then we have to do a lot of research. That's both of us. And we have to do all that as we, um, as we practice law. And in my case, as I preach the gospel. So,
Yeah. We're
so
we're busy, guys. We are I mean, we were both just up till 2, 3 a.m. getting ready for a big trial last night. And then Dad, you as the producer of the show and coming up with all of these images and doing all of the tech side, you spend all of your mornings doing that, getting the show ready, and then you have to produce and get and pray and get ready for your sermon for church tomorrow. So let me just thank you so much for all of your hard work. Being the senior partner at the firm, um, producing the show, the technology with the show, your leadership with church. I mean, just thank you. We appreciate it. I appreciate it. And it's just amazing to be able to see it and to see how much you and Mom really care and how much love you all have for everyone and the vitality that you all still have after all of these years. I thank you all both, you and Mama.
Oh man, what's that? My eyes sweating a little bit. Uh, thank you so much, Chloe. Thank you so much. It's a labor of love. It's not even work. I mean, just get fired up, because it's my calling.
Yeah.
And again, it's just so awesome doing it with you. All right. So just a couple more topics very quickly. I don't know if we can get to both of them. I do want to talk briefly about mask mandates on airplanes. It was struck down by this judge this past week, Judge Catherine Kimball Mazzell. And now, Chloe and I, as attorneys, we have an ethical duty not to slam judges, not to speak disparagingly of judges, and we're going to adhere to that, but there are a lot of people out there who have a whole lot of issues with this opinion. I have an issue with the opinion just based on the fact that common sense tells me that an airborne disease that has killed approximately 1 million people, many of which are blacks. That's why we're covering it, because this is legal news affecting the black community. Okay? So, an airborne disease that has killed that many people, and you know how crowded and closed spaced an airplane is, it seems to me that having masks on is a small price to pay, not only for your safety, but to protect other people. So I strongly disagree with this. No one wants to have to wear a mask, but to promote public safety, we should do so, especially in a crowded place like an airplane. We're beginning to see that the pandemic, that COVID-19 has a disproportionate impact on older people and people with health issues. So out of a respect for those people or concern for those people, keep the mask mandate going. And I would encourage every one of you, regardless of the mask mandate being overturned by this very young, very inexperienced judge, that you still wear your mask. And me pointing out her youthfulness and her lack of experience is not to disparage her. It's just the truth. She's a Trump appointee. I think she's early 30s and has not been on the bench long. And I've been reading about how some law professors are really, really going after her for this opinion, not just because of their probably ideological stance, but because I haven't read the opinion, but because according to them, the opinion is just based on the thinnest rationale, and logic and legal interpretation. And the damage it does is serious, because essentially she said the CDC doesn't have the authority to implement guidelines and regulations to protect public health. So what happens the next time something comes, and something is coming? What happens then? The CDC cannot do its job because this judge said, well, you don't have the authority to do it. And I'll say this, Chloe, and I'll be done. And this is a GOP nominated, confirmed judge. And I thought that they really did not like activist judges. That's what they say. They don't want judges legislating from the bench. How much more legislating from the bench can this be when she issued an opinion on, according to law professors, the thinnest rationale, and then apply it to the whole nation and tell an agency, the CDC, that's responsible for protecting public health, that you don't have the authority to regulate, to issue regulations and guidelines and procedures, etc., in the interest of public health. That's as activist as a judge can be.
Yeah. And back to her age, I mean, she was nominated by former President Trump in September 2020 at age 33. I'll be 32 in a couple months. So she was not much older than me. We're essentially the same age. She's never, and look, I'm not disparaging Judge Mizelle either. I'm just stating the facts according to what's been reported. She's never tried a civil or criminal case. So she's not a litigator.
Whoa, 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 whoa. I mean, we cannot go past that. That we cannot go past that. We cannot go past that. Never tried a civil or criminal case. Oh, wow. 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 All the grief they gave Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, who tried many cases, sat on the bench for many years, been a public defender, and here they confirm this judge, who never tried a case in criminal or civil court, and yet she's going to tell the nation what the CDC can and can't do. Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead.
That's their MO. We see how they did Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. They've done it to me. I had my experience with it this week practicing. I won't get into that, but it happens. It happens out here. And it'd be the same people. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Let me just report what the ABA said. The ABA said that they recommend that their nominees for federal judgeships have at least 12 years of experience practicing law. She only had 8 when she was nominated. The ABA said in a statement, since her admission to the bar, Judge Mizelle has not tried a case, civil or criminal, as lead or co-counsel. She did, however,
hold, Gloria, because people don't understand all what you're saying. So she hadn't even sat in on a trial, second chair.
Yeah.
And now she presides over trials
in federal court.
Okay, all right. I'm not gonna disparage her.
She had 4 federal clerkships, 10 months at a law firm, and approximately 3 years in government practice. This is the caste system to me that is in the legal profession. So you have someone who's clerk for, I'm not saying this specifically about Judge Mizelle, but just in general. You have a lawyer who has, had a few federal clerkships, maybe worked in governmental practice, but has absolutely no trial or litigation experience, that look down on someone who is a public defender, who has tried hundreds of cases, who, tried cases in or another candidate who may have tried cases in civil court. Yet because of the color of their skin, they automatically assume that we don't have the knowledge, the experience, or the intelligence to practice law at the same level. That burns me up. But so the ABA, they just said that she was criticized by the ABA because of her lack of professional experience. And I read some of the opinion, not a lot of it. Basically, the plaintiffs were two women who they said that the mask, they had a disability because they had anxiety. And one of the exceptions to the mask mandate was if you had a disability that was recognized by the Americans with Disability Act, you did not have to comply with the mask mandate. This plaintiff, in this case, she was saying that her anxiety should qualify as a disability under the ADA. Therefore, she should be exempt from the mask mandate. And because anxiety was not seen as a disability under the ADA, she was not exempt from wearing her mask, which is why she then filed suit and sued President Biden and various other governmental agencies, including the CDC. And just like you said, the overarching opinion was that the CDC does not have the authority to issue guidelines about public health. The Centers for Disease Control, she said, does not have the authority to issue guidelines dealing with community and public health. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm going to continue reading the opinion. It's over 50 pages. But so this is where we at now. Now, the President Biden, they have appealed it, so it's in the appellate process. So we'll see what happens, whether it's stayed or it's overturned.
Yeah. That's all you can do sometimes.
Yep.
Is just laugh, right? It's just laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Just laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there that is. I'm glad they appealed it. They had to, because otherwise it would have just cut the CDC off by the knees, by the kneecaps, this opinion. Okay. All right. So do we have time? Do you want to get into Marjorie Taylor Greene in a little bit of time that we have?
Just a couple minutes.
Okay.
Some Georgia voters filed a lawsuit trying to block freshman Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene from running for re-election, basically alleging that she is not fit for office because of her conduct and the things that she said about the January 6th insurrection and her support of it. This lawsuit was filed with the Georgia Secretary of State, and the main allegation is that her conduct violated the 14th Amendment. Okay. And I just want to read that portion of the 14th Amendment.
Okay.
Yeah. Because most people, we associate the 14th Amendment with, the state can't deprive us of life, liberty, or property. We get our due process, which is if you're accused of a crime, you have the right to be heard and to confront your witnesses, etc. But there's another section of the 14th Amendment, and this is where that they said that her conduct violated. Let me pull it up. I want to read it for everyone. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. It says, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president or vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. So the plaintiffs in this case, which was brought by a group called Free Speech for People, they're saying that Marjorie Taylor Greene's support of the January 6th insurrection, her conduct at the protest, all of that violates this section of the 14th Amendment because they're alleging that she engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States.
Was that Section 3 you said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm trying to
So
pull it up.
it's kind of interesting. I think it's legally, I think is a thin cause of action, a thin claim. This was enacted right after the Civil War in regards to Confederate members of Congress and people who supported the Confederacy in opposition of the Union. So I don't believe they're going to get that far. But there was a judge that has said that they can continue with their lawsuit. So we'll see where it goes. She had a very public administrative hearing of the past couple days. A lot of people have analyzed it, said that her answers were contradictory. She tried to say she didn't recall a lot of information. And what has been noted is that judge, the administrative judge, is supposedly conservative and kind of aligned with her. But we'll continue to see what happens with this lawsuit, and I just wanted to touch on it because I think it's interesting that they brought this cause of action saying that she violated the 14th Amendment, that section. So we'll see where it goes from there.
Well, it's been an invigorating show. Thank you for talking to us, Chloe, about Marjorie Taylor Greene. To me, who is an imbecile, to be honest
Yeah.
with you.
Mm-hmm.
You're being nice. I'll just go on and say it. I mean, just call a spade a spade.
Yep.
And dangerous too. She's a dangerous woman. She's QAnon and all of that. And more of her type are trying to get into Congress. And it's just really amazing that we're living in these days. But we are. And it's all the more important that folks come to this channel and learn what you're not hearing on the evening news. Okay? You're going to get it right here. So you need to come every Saturday, spend a little time with us, tell everybody about the channel, join and engage. Go to YouTube. That's really where you should meet us, on YouTube, actually. That's where we, tend to get a lot of engagement. We thank God for our Facebook followers as well, but really YouTube is where you need to go. That's where we really focus. But you need to know this information. Top legal news affecting African Americans. No other channel does it like we do. Okay? So, Chloe, that's going to do it for us. We're going to try to spend the rest of this evening relaxing a little bit, although we got a lot of work to do. We got a big trial coming up in 2 weeks. Yep. And so we've been working feverishly to get to do the finishing touches on that trial. Okay? Yep. And we'll tell you about that trial. It'll blow your mind. Okay? Yep. It'll blow your mind. So we'll talk about it soon, probably afterwards. Mm-hmm. Okay? So, Chloe, do you have any more?
That's it, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being with us this Saturday. We'll see you all next Saturday. It's been a pleasure. Like, comment, subscribe.
All right. That is it. We are out. Bye.